And welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with Carol Tallon and myself, Bryan Fox. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. So now we're joined by PJ Rudden from the Construction Sector Group with a focus on innovation and digital adoption. So before we first begin, PJ, we might just talk about this later. I see you've been, you're now chairman of the Innovation and Digital Adoption Construction Sector Group, which was established under the leadership of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, which sounds very interesting. But before we discuss that, let's just talk about the construction innovation. How does the Irish industry compare to our international peers?
Poorly.
Oh.
And this is the reason why this group has been set up. We're a small country with a very large fragmentation of the industry. About something like 96% of the entire industry are SMEs, and there are some 15 large contractors. So it's quite a fragmented scene. And, you know, the large contractors are, you know, into digital and so on, but the SMEs are not for various reasons. And that's the situation we're trying to address.
And so, I mean, it's been there quite a while. Why do you think the small and medium enterprises and so forth are slow to adapt to innovation at the moment in relation to digital and internet, etc.?
Well, in fairness to them, a lot of them are specialist digital people, and they contribute hugely in a subcontractor capacity to a lot of major projects.
Right.
But you know, in terms of the new digital technology, there's a significant cost factor. It's probably the biggest barrier. There's also, you know, a lack of appreciation of the opportunities that digital can bring. And, you know, there are more opportunities than there are barriers, but, you know, you tend to think of the barriers until the opportunities are opened up to you.
So, I mean, investment, you know, in this sort of area, you're saying there that it can be expensive, but surely that can pay off in the long run.
It can, but you need to have knowledge of what it can do for you to spend wisely. And you can start, you know, with the simpler technology and then move forward. It can be a progressive entry into innovation. But, you know, we don't have a great deal of time left to start building smartly in this country. And we have a climate problem as well. And the two are interlinked, as you know.
Yeah. Tell us, why do you think the Department of Public Expenditure Reform thought it necessary to have Project Ireland 2040, isn't it, I think?
Yes. Yeah. Well, Ireland 2040 is a national ambition since 2018, in fact. Why did the Department of Public Expenditure Reform decide to invest in this? Quite simply because they recognise the market failure that there is, that without some state support, particularly with an industry that's has such a predominance of SMEs, it's simply not going to happen. So they're priming the pump, if you like, in a very innovative way, in fact. This has never been done before. And this is a chance in a generation that won't crop up for at least another generation. There have been attempts to build large scale in this country. And as you know, there was an economic recession which took away a lot of the resources to help do that. And just as the recession was ending, as you know, we had COVID. So we have an opportunity now in recovery, not just to get building again, but to build smarter, to build greener, and to build more productively.
And what's the reaction like from the from the construction industry to this new project that you're leading, innovation and digital adoption?
It's very positive and very constructive, and indeed they're helping us with us. We wouldn't be doing it without the construction industry. It is the construction industry who are doing this project. In fact, I'm just the chairman.
Yeah, PJ, that's an important point actually, and it's one that probably doesn't get said too often. But I'm just trying to recall the last time we spoke, you had actually been quite recently appointed as chairman of this group. So actually, I might just take you a step back and you might just explain for people who aren't familiar, what exactly is the construction sector group and what is your remit?
Okay, the construction sector group was set up in 2018, around the time of the first National Development Plan. And I think the government recognised that we had a resource issue in the industry. So they commissioned a report on productivity by KPMG. And that report gave us the facts and figures that I was speaking to Bryan about there a moment ago, and compared our productivity against the UK and various European countries and as far away as Australia and New Zealand. And we don't score very highly in that. And, you know, that proves the value of getting that report. And there were 7 priority actions taken from that report. And they're the 7 priority actions that I am leading the delivery of. And I should say, Carol, it started about a year ago. It's, in fact, this month is our first anniversary, and a lot has happened. And I can go through the progress of those actions with you.
Yeah, please do. Because when we spoke, COVID-19 was well and truly in the throes of it, but we didn't know how long it was going to last. And I don't think for our conversation around this time last year, I don't think we expected that the construction industry in Ireland would be closed for the first quarter of the year, you know. So how has that, so actually you might just remind us of what the 7 priority actions are, and then maybe you could give us a little update on them.
Okay. Action 1 is to explore as much research as possible into modern methods of construction, but also to research. The R&D element of construction has not been huge to date, so that needs to be rectified. Action 2 is to find funding sources within Ireland and the EU to help to run pilot projects into innovative ways of doing things that will act as an accelerator to the industry. Action 3 is to build a unit that will actually be called modern methods of construction. Some people call it off-site construction, but it's more than just off-site. It's modern materials. And in the current climate situation, it's also low carbon materials. Action 4 is to build a new construction technology centre by Enterprise Ireland. None such centre exists for construction. We have it for food and manufacturing and other areas that are doing very well. And it's no surprise that we don't have one for the construction industry because nobody has ever actually done this before. Action 5 is to build a skill net, a digital skill net for construction. I mean, we have a huge resource issue, not just as, you know, engineers and architect level, but even more so in terms of the trades and the apprenticeships. And really, it's the apprenticeship area and the trades area that we need to focus on most strongly, and also bring in a much stronger gender balance, which, as you know, does not exist in the industry. Action 6 is probably going to be the most popular innovation of all because it will affect everybody in that it will digitize the planning permission system, so there will be no more 6 hard copies of applications to be made to 31 local authorities. We've been working on that quite hard this year, and I'm happy to tell you that next year we'll be rolling it out on a county by county basis to each local authority, and the days of paper planning applications are gone. This will accelerate the planning process, of course, which is one of the complaints made. Action 7 is about to be kicked off. It's the Build Digital project involving a consortium of third level colleges who will research and activate, not just research, but actually determine and develop building information modeling, not just as it currently is to ensure accurate buildings, but to control program costs, carbon embedment, and energy costs, the whole cycle costs and asset management costs, which are about 80% of the cost of the entire project. They're the 7 actions. And okay, we have tremendous progress on each of them. In fact, on most of them, they're well on the way to being delivered. And certainly, apart from the Action 7, they'll be fully delivered in terms of starting the processes and starting the new methods in operation next year.
And before we get into individual progress, and you know, a figure you mentioned earlier has really struck me because I wasn't aware that it was so stark. 96% of the sector is made up of SMEs.
Yes, and a great bulk of those have less than 10 employees.
So how do you reach out to people in that position? Because, you know, an awful lot of the work we see being done is through, you know, strong lobby bodies like the Construction Industry Federation or the Home Builders Association of Ireland, which obviously both organisations are doing great out in the industry. But if you're talking about people who have fewer than 10 employees, that's a very disparate group. How do you bring them together? Have they ever been brought together?
I'm not so sure. I'm certainly not in the construction industry because we don't actually know who they currently are, as I think you know yourself. We're challenged by this, but we're not at all. Our ambition is not at all dimmed by this at all, because we intend that we're going to leave nobody behind on this.
You know, and that's a really important point, PJ. But you mentioned there, you know, we have somewhere in the region of 15 very large contractors. And this might be an unfair question to ask, but in terms of supporting the supply chain, do the larger contractors have a role to play in helping their supply chain overcome some of the barriers? Because I think you articulated very well that the opportunities far outweigh the barriers once people are aware of them. Do the larger contractors have a role to play maybe in providing training, perhaps resourcing in terms of new technologies? The supply chain, is that one route to get kind of deep into the subcontractors?
It's one of many, but bear in mind, most of these SMEs work as subcontractors for the larger contractors. So, you know, it's not that anybody in this country with construction experience is idle. We could probably do another 150,000 people in construction at the moment. We're about to publish a new national development plan, which 2 or 3 years ago when it was published, and it didn't get fully off the ground due to COVID and various other things, it had a capital value of 116 billion euros. It now has a capital value, when it's fully announced, although the price tag is out there, of 165 billion. That's an increase of 40%. We simply don't have the people to build it currently. We have to get them.
Why is that labour shortage there, PJ? I mean, has it gone because of COVID? Gone back to?
No. In fact, COVID is partly responsible, but we lost a lot of our major construction resource during the recessionary period. We had 250,000 people in construction in 2009. That dropped to 100,000 10 years later. And we're just building it up. We're up at about 150,000 again. But, you know, it's not just the numbers. And the numbers are important, but the skill sets are even more important.
Sure.
You now have to retrofit houses, not shallow retrofit as we were doing. We have to do deep retrofit. And there's a skill and a training, as you say, to all of that. We also have to build accommodation for another 1 million people on this island by 2040. And you might say that's a long way away. It's around the corner in terms of the 10 years that it takes these projects to get designed through the planning process and the objections and all that, and get built.
Just sorry, before you come in, sorry, I'm just curious. How do we compete compensation wise? You know, pounds and pence, if you like, are euros, and so in terms of getting labour in from wherever it's supposed to come from. Do we compete on that basis?
Frankly, I don't personally know, but you know, I mean. There is a labour market there. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition which has driven prices down, but there's a lot of competition for good staff that's actually moving wages up. And I mean, you know, anecdotally, it's impossible to get somebody to do a small job now in terms of extensions and all of that. Even to get a tree cut down, you have to wait weeks and weeks, as I discovered myself. So there's huge ambition, and there's a latent opportunity here to employ a lot more people in construction, to upskill them and give them meaningful careers, and to increase the gender balance, which will take some time to achieve.
Why is that not being achieved at the moment? Why aren't there more people coming into the construction industry at an apprentice level from both sexes?
Well, there are two issues at play there, in my view. One is that up to now, it has been perceived as a cyclical industry that has peaks and troughs, and that has been the case. But with the current expenditure that's about to be applied to construction, there will be no trough for 10 or 20 years in this country, if even we achieve our current ambition of this plan to spend 165 billion. I mean, there is nothing but attractive, very rewarding, good, well-paid construction jobs here in the offering. Why do we have not enough apprentices? Because there is a focus on going to college.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, going to college is fine, but I think we have plenty of people going to college. We don't have enough people going into apprentices, apprenticeships. And to be fair to the new government Department of Further and Higher Education, they are recognising this and incentivising apprenticeships and employers to engage in apprenticeship schemes. And there's a relatively new project initiative by the minister there, which is starting to take hold. And all the organs of government recognise these issues, and they're all working together to solve it. And the National Development Plan is a whole of government approach, as is the new Climate Action Plan, a whole of government approach to build productively, to build digitally, and to build sustainably.
PJ, is it fair to say that the construction industry has not been a good advocate for itself when it comes to attracting talent? Because over the past year and a half, we've seen two distinct gaps. One of those is at the senior level. People don't see the construction as being a sector that you can cross into. Everything from all the disciplines across the C-suite, whether it's finance, marketing, or the more technical C-suite positions, people don't believe that it's a transition they can make. And maybe with the rise of more modern methods of construction, that will be seen as an easier flow into more manufacturing. But the second thing is at apprenticeship and trade level. I heard a 27-year-old say they'd missed the boat, and if they felt they were too late to go back and do an apprenticeship at 27. So are we doing something to attract the right people?
I don't agree with that, Carol. I mean, the training required to get into construction is relatively modest in comparison to other professions, in fact, and that might come as a pleasant surprise to some people. It's in terms of the skills, they are important and unique skills, but they can be built upon, and can be built upon on an apprenticeship level out of Leaving Cert. They can be built upon in third level education. And we have the other major initiative in the past year or two of the setting up of the technological universities, which are less academic and more practical in terms of the likes of construction. And therefore it's no surprise that it is the new technological universities in Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Athlone, Letterkenny, Carlow, Waterford, and so on, that have won the project for Build Digital, and which they will be rolling out on a regional basis, which will make a lot of difference, particularly to people who currently maybe are in rural areas working from home, and they don't have to travel to Dublin for all of this anymore. So I think there's a bright future. The whole situation is pivoting in a positive direction towards construction, towards attracting people into those careers. And it's a career that has given me a great 30, 40 years, and I have no regrets. Okay, I went in through the third level colleges and became an engineer, but I mean, it takes more than, we need engineers, architects, we need surveyors, we need, and the wet trades are hugely underemployed at the moment. You know, I had a meeting recently with the Congress of Trade Unions, and they were telling me about the challenges in getting people into wet trades, and that's coming from the union point of view, who are also being very constructive and who are on the CSG. In fact, they're on the construction sector group.
And can you give us maybe some insight into what those challenges are? I mean, is there a bit of an outdated perception of what a career in construction is?
Perhaps, but we're seeking to change that. The CIF have had a very good careers program running for a year or more. In fact, the KPMG report addressed that issue of you know, training and careers in construction and the gender balance issue, and they're working on it very strongly. As the new National Development Plan gets rolled out, you're going to hear more and more about this, because we're going to invest in that activity 5 SkillNet, and we're going to invest in consultation with SONUS and the, you know, the education boards, the Department of Higher and Further Education, and you know, it's going to be a very comprehensive approach to upskill the industry and upskill the numbers in the industry as well.
Okay, well, look, very briefly, I'm conscious of your time, PJ. But I would love to be able to share with the industry just some of the highlights in terms of the progress. So you mentioned there digitising the planning process. I think that will come as a great relief to so many people, because everything that's done throughout the construction industry depends on planning. So it's a bit of a, you know, it's an important cog there in the wheel. So can you maybe give us some of the highlights in terms of progress and maybe what your focus is going to be for the next 12 to 18 months?
The focus over the next 12 to 18 months is to get the Construction Technology Centre, the new centre that doesn't exist, get it up and running. It will be partly physical, partly virtual. It will contain the training required for modern methods of construction. It'll also probably, you know, the Build Digital project and the modern methods of construction will probably end up being hosted there too. So it will be one integrated centre, which doesn't exist with regard to any other industry, but a particular effort is being made to set this up in a very innovative way. I mean, for instance, one of the challenges up to now is that, you know, construction isn't recognized as a proper industry, like manufacturing is, and like the industries that have a technology centre. As a result of that, the Enterprise Ireland grants up to now have not extended to the industry in the same way as they extend to other industries. But I'm glad to say to you, and thanks to government on this, Housing for All has changed all that. Their Housing for All ambition, recently published, has in fact requested Enterprise Ireland to turn towards domestic construction for the first time. So there will be a new package of supports there that never existed before. And that's only news in recent weeks.
Yeah, that's a really positive one. But again, we're almost circling back to the challenge of how do you reach the 96%? So will Enterprise Ireland be in a position to reach them through perhaps their network of local enterprise offices?
There will be structures. There are structures for each of those micro businesses, starting with the LEOs locally and escalating. But there'll be a set of supports to go with those structures for the very first time. I think the only thing you could get up to now is what they call an innovation voucher for 5K. That system is going to be replaced with a much more robust system, and Enterprise Ireland will be much more involved in the construction industry going forward, and bring in their innovative skills. And we're also completing a major report, which has been done by Ernst & Young, on the detailed description of needs of that Construction Technology Centre. Again, they're employed by Enterprise Ireland, but they're looking at what will it contain, and it will be a bespoke facility which will contain what the industry are now saying to Enterprise Ireland it should contain. It will solve the problems that people are now aware of, and it will build you know, a centre on which we can escalate the industry to high levels of productivity, high levels of sustainability, high levels of digitization, and them all interconnected in one new intelligent unit that will drive development. I mean, a huge development to provide the housing, the hospitals, the schools, the training centres for an extra 1 million people, and the jobs for an extra 1 million people spread more evenly around the country under a new planning, a new national planning framework, which wants to increase the size of Cork, Limerick, Galway and Waterford, the three main cities outside Dublin, to give those cities scale, which they currently may or may not have, and if you like, reduce the congestion in Dublin. I think COVID has greatly assisted in reducing that somewhat, but everybody will tell you the motorways are full again. But I think people are pivoting to a new way of working. There was a lot of sadness with COVID, but in fact, we learned a lot of lessons. We had less pollution. We had less congestion. People were able to spend much time with their families and do their job. And people were supported adequately by the government during that period. So I think, we had a period of living with COVID. We now have a period of the new living. And I'm not going to use the bandied phrases about it. But, there is, great excitement in rural areas, which is
definitely is.
Where I come from a rural area myself. I know all about it. And I think we'll see a very, very balanced approach towards future development, because this is the first time a national development plan has been repurposed side by side with a national planning structure. There was a national planning structure before, but there was no money to do what was required, and there was decentralization. But again, that didn't work. This is now working in tandem for the first time ever. And
there's a lot.
And they're in sync.
There's a lot to be optimistic about there, PJ. And finally, before we let you go, just one final thing. The only thing we didn't touch on is culture. And you mentioned there you've had 3-4 good decades in this industry. What's the key measure that's going to impact when it comes to culture change here? Because we know so much of innovation and digital adoption comes down to that.
Yes, well, innovation is the driver, really, and everybody wants a better standard of living, and there will be a better standard of living in the construction industry. There's no question about that. We want to be the leaders in Europe, not the laggards in this respect, and we have the means now uniquely on our island to do that, I think.
Yeah, look, I think you articulated well, and it's worth repeating. When it comes to innovation and digitising the construction industry, there are more opportunities than barriers, and I think that's ideal. That was PJ Rudden. Thank you, PJ, from the Construction Sector Group with a focus on innovation and digital adoption. That's it from us this week. Thank you for listening into Property Matters on Dublin South FM. You can get in touch with the show by emailing hello@iPropertyRadio or on social media at iPropertyRadio. Thank you to Peter Rice on sound, and we're back at the same time next week from Bryan Fox and myself, Carol Tallon. Stay safe.